start the game of Forbidden Island, shuffle the 24 island tiles. Then place them out in the playing area in the following way. Make 2 columns of 6 tiles each. Make sure to leave space between each island tile. Then place 4 tiles on both sides of the 2 columns of 6. Finally, place 2 more tiles on the outside to make a shape that looks like this. Next, place out the 4 treasures. Now the cards will be placed out. The blue flood deck will be shuffled and placed on one side of the island, and the orange treasure deck will be shuffled and placed on the other side of the island. Now the top 6 cards of the flood deck will be drawn and placed into the discard pile one at a time. As the cards are flipped, the matching tile on the island will be located and flipped over to show the flooded side. When all of the cards have been drawn, there should be 6 tiles that are flipped over to show their flooded side. Finally, the water level is set. There are 4 levels of difficulty that players can choose. The novice level offers the easiest game, and the legendary level offers the most challenging game. Beginner players should start on the novice level. The water level marker is placed somewhere to the side of the game board. After the game area is set up, each player will set up their individual player area. Each player will play as a unique adventurer during the game. They will randomly be dealt one of the 6 adventurer cards. This card will tell their adventurer type and their special ability during the game. It will also tell them the color of pawn they will play as. The other side of each adventurer card is a reference to tell the order of play and also the actions a player can take during the game. Each player will place their player pawn on their corresponding start tile. To figure out what tile they start on, they look for their colored pawn on the bottom right-hand corner of the tile and place their pawn on that tile. A player will still place their pawn on their corresponding tile even if it is flooded. Finally, the treasure deck is located from the side of the island, and each player is dealt 2 cards from the deck, which they will place face up in their player area. If any player is dealt a Water's Rise card, they will shuffle it back into the treasure deck and gain another card. When both the game area and the player's areas are set up, they are ready to start playing. The player to have last visited an island goes first. The first player will start by taking up to 3 actions. This means that they could take 0, 1, 2, or 3 actions if they choose. They may do any combination of the actions, so if they choose, they could do 3 of the same action. Let's take a look at the actions that they are allowed during the game. One action they can choose is to move their pawn around the island. They may move 1 tile to the left, right, top, or bottom of the tile they are currently on. But they may not move diagonally, unless their explorer gives them a special ability to do so. They may move onto a tile that has been flipped over and is flooded, but they may not move across a tile that has been removed from the island, unless their adventurer gives them a special ability to do so. There are a few adventurers that have special moving abilities. Let's take a look at these adventurers. The explorer is allowed to move in any direction, including diagonally. The pilot can move anywhere on the island for 1 action. They are only allowed to do this once per turn. The navigator can move any other player's pawn up to 2 adjacent tiles for 1 action. They must follow the normal rules of movement, so they are not allowed to move them diagonally. And the diver is allowed to move through 1 or more adjacent missing tiles to the nearest tile for 1 action. The second action they can choose to do is shore up an island tile. This is moving a tile from its flooded state to its non-flooded state by flipping it over. They are allowed to shore up any island tile that they are currently on by lifting up their pawn, flipping over the tile to its non-flooded state, and placing their pawn back on the tile. They are also allowed to shore up any tile that is to the left, right, top, or bottom of the tile that they are currently on for one action. But they are not allowed to shore up diagonal tiles unless their adventurer gives them the special ability to do so. There are 2 explorers that have special shore-up abilities. Let's take a look at those explorers. The engineer may shore up 2 tiles using the normal shore-up rules for one action. And the explorer may shore up tiles that are diagonal to their current location. The third action a player may do is to give 1 or more of their treasure cards to another player, as long as both players are in the same tile. They may give 1 card per action they use. Only the 4 treasure cards may be traded, not any of the special cards. The messenger is the only player with a special ability while giving cards. They may give treasure cards to any player even if they are not on the same tile. The final action a player can choose to use is to capture a treasure. To capture a treasure, a player must collect 4 matching treasure cards. After gaining the 4 treasure cards, they must get their pawn to one of the 2 tiles with the matching treasure symbol in its left-hand corner. They will then discard their 4 treasure cards to the discard pile next to the treasure deck and place the treasure that they captured next to their player area. After a player has finished using up to 3 actions, they move on to the second part of their turn, drawing treasure cards. The second step of a player's turn is to draw 2 cards from the top of the treasure card deck. They will draw the cards one at a time and add them to their player area. If the treasure card pile runs out while they are drawing, they shuffle the discard pile and form a new treasure deck. If they draw a Water's Rise card, they will immediately complete the actions listed on the card. The first step of completing a Water's Rise card is to move the water level up 1. As the water level marker moves up, the game becomes progressively more difficult. The next step is to take all of the cards from the flood discard pile, shuffle them, and then place them face down on the top of the flood card deck. This means that the cards that were already previously drawn can now be drawn again. The final step is to discard the Water's Rise card to the treasure discard pile. If a player draws 2 Water's Rise cards during their turn, the water level will still be moved up once for each card, but they will only shuffle the discard pile and place it on top of the flood deck 1 time. Both of the Water's Rise cards will still be placed in the discard pile. While drawing cards, players must always obey the hand limit. They are only allowed to have a max of 5 cards in their hand at the end of their turn. This includes treasure cards and special action cards. If you go over the hand limit during your turn, you must decide which cards to discard. Special action cards may be used before they are discarded. So a helicopter lift could be used to move 1 or more pawns on the same tile to any other tile. And a sandbag card may be used to shore up any one tile on the island. Extra treasure cards may be removed from your hand and placed into the treasure card discard pile. After a player finishes drawing their treasure cards, they move on to the final step of their turn, drawing flood cards. The final step of a player's turn is to draw flood cards. To do this, they will look at the water meter level. The number in the region where their marker is tells the number of cards that they will have to draw. Before drawing, all players should look to their hand and see if they have any sandbag cards. They may discard this card and shore up any island tile that they choose. They may not use the sandbag card to save an island tile that has been drawn, so they must decide now if they would like to use them. Next, they will draw the amount of cards from the flood deck that the water meter level indicated. If a player is drawing flood cards and the deck runs out, they will shuffle the discard pile and form a new deck. As they flip up cards, They will place them in the discard pile and locate the matching tile on the island and flip it over to its flooded side if it hasn't already been flipped over. If they flip over a card and locate the tile to find that it has already been flooded, they will remove the tile from the game. The corresponding flood card is also removed from the game. If one of the explorers is on a tile that is removed from the game, they will choose one of the adjacent tiles to swim to, either to the left, right, top, or bottom of where they were, and place their pawn on that tile. If the green explorer player is on a tile that is removed from the game, they are allowed to swim to any of the adjacent tiles, as well as any diagonal tile. And if the blue pilot player is on a tile that is removed from the game, they are allowed to save themselves by flying to any tile that they choose on the island. If the player playing as the diver with the black-colored pawn is on a tile that is removed from the game, they may swim any distance to save themselves. If any player is on a tile that sinks during the game, and there is no tile to swim to, their player drowns, and the game immediately ends with everyone losing. After a player finishes drawing flood cards, the next player in clockwise order starts their turn by taking up to 3 actions. Forbidden Island is a cooperative game with an all-or-nothing format. The game ends when either all players win or all players lose. The only way players can win the game is to collect all 4 of the treasures around the island. It doesn't matter which players have the treasures, it just matters that all 4 are collected. After collecting all of the treasures, all players must make it to the Fool's Landing tile. Finally, one of the players must discard a helicopter lift card to the treasure discard pile, which will allow all of the players to lift themselves from the island to safety and win the game. There are several ways that players can lose the game. If both island tiles displaying one type of treasure are removed from the game before players can collect that type of treasure, they immediately lose. If the Fool's Landing tile is removed from the game, they immediately lose as well. As mentioned previously, if a player is on a tile that is removed from the game and they are not able to swim to another tile, the game is immediately lost. Finally, if the water level reaches the skull and crossbones level, all players lose. As you can see, there are several ways to lose the game, but if players work together, they can succeed and win.